Bouncers of Reddit. Have you ever crossed paths with someone you've had to throw out of a club or bar? How was the experience?
It happened fairly frequently with the regulars. As long as they weren't fighting, they'd be allowed back in the next night. Usually they were pretty embarrassed and apologized for being a drink, and one time I did have to kick out a good friend because he got in a fight. He was in a bad place and was pretty embarrassed by the whole thing. We didn't really talk about it much afterwards. That was over a decade ago, and we're still friends today, and he's settled down and doesn't drink like he used to. My buddy owned a bar. They had a way of dealing with regulars who got out of hand on occasion. They used to say they would 68 people instead of 86. It didn't mean you were banned, it just meant you couldn't come back for a while. Like a suspension for a month or two depending on the infraction. Just to let the other people cool down and decide they weren't off at you anymore. Glad your friend is okay.
I was interviewed by a guy we had tossed out. I still remember his name because he was such a douchebag that we banned him after this interaction, and we all kind of laughed at his name because it fit his behavior so well. Think Kyle Blake, not his real name, but he has two kind of bro names as first and last. Anyway, fast forward about a year, having finished school, and I'm at a staffing agency to interview for some job. In walks Mr. Blake. Unfortunately, nothing super interesting happened, but throughout the interview he acted a little strange. I never found out if he recognized me, but I was not offered the job. So you threw out Jake Paul? What do I like to do in my free time? I usually spend it down at the bar throwing douche bros out on their face.
I have a slightly relevant story. My brother went to uni in kind of a rough city. He was at a student bar and watched this guy get bounced. Well, he and a bouncer crossed paths again that night. The guy came back with a chainsaw. Needless to say, he ruined the fun for everyone else, and cops were involved. Bouncer was not injured. He chained, he saw, he bouncered. Sadly his bar burned down later. The band just played fiddle. It's not every night that a drunk man shows up with a chainsaw at your local watering hole.
I was a bouncer in a higher-end Toronto club in 2001. People were generally respectful and just out to have a fun night. The only real memorable ejection was from a couple we caught having in the ladies' washroom. It was very awkward. We had to ensure that it was consensual and ask them to stop and then escort them out. Because the bathroom facilities were limited to 3 or 4 stalls per gendered washroom, there was a long line up for the ladies' room. The couple then had to do the walk of shame past the long washroom lineup. They were then escorted from the establishment. Good. Women's restrooms already take way too long and have queues that go on forever. I was at a club once with a really long line to the bathroom. The door opened and a guy and a girl started to go in together, and this huge guy who was in front of me jumped out of line and blocked the door, saying, "No, we're doing in here. Look at this line." They shamefacedly walked away and everyone in line cheered, and we let the big guy cut ahead and go next. One of my favorite nightclub moments of all time.
Not a bouncer but an ex-manager, so still had to throw people out. Had one guy come back sober and apologize for his behavior and actually thank me for throwing him out. Apparently it was a wake-up call for him, not the first time he'd been an aggressive drunk. I didn't see him again after that, so not sure if he actually changed though. Here's to hoping he did. Here's to not hoping he died. I didn't see, not the first time I read that.
I was a bouncer years and years ago, but I had to throw out a friend of mine. He didn't pick fights or anything, but was becoming abusive to the staff. When he sobered up he felt really bad about it and came back to apologize. I'm not a bouncer, but in my youth I got thrown out of a bar for taking a picture of my wife. We were young then lol and were out drinking. They let women dance on the bar some nights. My wife starts doing it, so I snap a pic to show her after. Never in my life have I seen so many bouncers jump onto someone, me. I got kicked out. I was able to come back later, after my wife confirmed it was me, her husband taking the photo. I worked as a bouncer in college for about 3 years, and I'll never forget one night one of the bartenders called me over to check on a young lady who was essentially passed out. She was, kind of, sitting in a chair, and there was a dude next to her trying to talk to her, attempting to scoop her up. I asked what was going on, and he said it was his GF and he needed to take her home. I told him I wasn't going to let some random guy put an unconscious girl into his car, whether it was his GF or not. I took her over to the door I was posted at. One of the bartenders ended up tracking down a girlfriend she had come with. I told the friend that her boyfriend had tried to take her home when she interrupted me with, "She doesn't have a BF." Creep, I'm sure it happens all the time.
Former barman had to encourage a lad to leave his work Christmas party after his elaborately choreographed karaoke rendition of Like a Virgin, with very pointed references to an older lady. His boss, I suspect, did not go down well. Saw him the next morning working the till in the local supermarket. I've never seen someone's face go white, red, green so rapidly. White, red, green, at least he stayed with the theme of the season. Beat me to it. I just instantly decomposed from shame.
Been thrown out by bouncers and met them later. They don't care what happens after, that's just their job to do at the time. I used to bartend, and I wouldn't hold any reservations for someone I have kicked out my pub previously. Think it's the same for door staff. Yeah, I've been tossed out before. I was trying to throw confetti streamer things into the crowd. Since I was drunk, I did a bad job at it, and the roll of paper hit someone, I guess. It's that color tissue paper stuff. Two guys tried to kick me out, and I wiggled free. Then a big giant dude comes up from behind me and picks me up and sets me outside. There were no hard feelings and I didn't even look to see who it was. I just accepted it and kept walking, and my friends showed up like it was all planned. We continued the night. The picture that painted in my head gave me a good chuckle. Our job at the front door is to make sure someone we recognize doesn't get back in if they were kicked out. Not to give them a hard time at the supermarket.
I once went to a pub and realized I knew the bouncer from elsewhere. She was a nude model at an art class I attended. So by night she works in security and by day she works without insecurity. By day, people put her on a canvas, by night she puts rowdy people on the canvas. By night she works till closing time, by day she works till clothing time.
I own a small restaurant with a bar, and we have to 86 people a few times a year. One of them was a regular who just got a little too racist. We all hated him anyways and were just waiting for him to screw up. He did. We had to drag him out. Total scene. I see him all the time. If he's drunk, he will talk to me, but I just walk away. He's a sad, drunk old man who's already filled with misery. Punching him in the mouth wouldn't solve anything. Maybe he's never been punched in the mouth, could be the problem. HR was registering as an 8 literal Nazi on the racist scale when the establishment clearly stated they only allow 6. I have a black friend and below. Our job at the front door is to make sure someone we recognize doesn't get back in if they were kicked out. Not to give them a hard time at the supermarket.